Hey everybody, welcome back to Sophisticakes by Mary. For this video, I wanted to show you how I made this pale pink chocolate drip cake that featured some stenciling, some edible leaf, some macarons, some bas relief, and some silk flowers. So if this sounds interesting to you, please stick around. We'll get right to it after the intro. So I started off with some macarons that I had already made ahead of time. I just colored them a pale pink, and I'm gonna add some gold and some silver airbrushing. I kind of wanted to combine the two because I wanted a light airy feel to them, and I felt like adding that silver here and there on this cake kind of gave it that kind of ethereal kind of look. So I mixed my color, my gold, with my Everclear to get this gold color. The silver, I actually already have an airbrush color that is the silver that I wanted. It was more of a silver pearl. Now, I airbrushed both sides of these, but I did not show that because you get the idea. I did these first because I wanted them to sit to the side and dry. And for the fondant, I used satin ice, and I added about 2 tablespoons of shortening to the fondant to get it that stretchy look, or that stretchy feel, to get it more pliable. And then I also added some pre-colored pink. I wanted a very pale pink, and this actually almost looks white, but I promise you it is a pale, pale pink. And sometimes it's easier just to add pre-colored fondant than to add your color gels. Either one works, but especially when you're doing a darker color, sometimes your pre-colored fondant works best. Now I'm going to do the paneling method on this cake. I am using a foam dummy for this, but it would be the same technique if you did it on an actual cake. And I've had requests on how to show how to do this paneling instead of putting the foam cake dummy on the table and rolling it. People want to know how you do this on a real cake, so this is how you do it. So you roll it out and you place a disc on top and cut off the sides with an X-Acto knife. Now I'm adding shortening. If you don't want to use shortening, you can use water. You can use a simple syrup. You can use a few other things. So it doesn't have to be shortening, but that's just my go-to. And then I needed to roll out a long rectangular piece of fondant. I measured the height and the distance around the cake, so I know how big this piece needs to be. Use some cornstarch on your surface and on the surface of your counter and on the surface of your fondant to make it easier to roll out so it doesn't stick. And I'm just using this, it's actually a quilting ruler, I believe is what it is. You can get it in the sewing section at your hobby stores. And I am marking out and cutting the excess off that I don't need. I always add about an inch or two to the distance around the cake so that I know I have enough. I can cut off the excess, and it always stretches as you apply it. And to get it on the cake, I'm using the dowel rod. You can use a large rolling pin if you like, but I find that I like the bottom of the tool that I'm using to be flat. The rolling pins, the fondant rolling pins, the big ones, tend to be kind of a beveled edge, and sometimes that makes it hard to cut in the excess at the bottom, because really the goal here is to not have a whole lot at the bottom to cut off. Now I rolled it up on itself with some cornstarch so it doesn't stick to itself in the transfer. Pick it up, gently place it on the side, and don't take too much time doing this because it's going to want to fall. Fondant is heavy, and you can see how it kind of, where I started and where I ended, the ending piece was a little lower than the starting. So I kind of pick it up, replace it, and then you want to smooth your sides. Get it to adhere to your surface. And where the two meet, I had actually cut off a lot of the excess that you saw, but because the weight can be a problem. So that I'm smoothing it and finding where they two meet, and use your ruler again to cut through both layers. Cut off the extra on the outside, then peel it away and get the extra piece from the inside. And these two pieces should butt up together pretty smoothly. Get those pieces as smooth together as you can, and then I like to wad up a ball of fondant and use that as a smoother also because it conforms to the circular shape of your cake. And then I put it in the refrigerator and let it firm up a little bit before I went in and used my X-Acto knife to cut off the extra. Now since the top is going to be covered with a drip, it doesn't matter so much if it's perfect. You can spend more time doing that. To make the bas relief, I used a flower mold that I got. It's actually a clay flower mold, I believe. A lot of the clay tools you can use for fondant. They work really well for that. And I wanted to use different flower molds. I have other flower molds, but these were different than the standard that I typically use, so I wanted to change it up. I actually just popped them right out. You can put them in your refrigerator or your freezer to firm up if that makes it easier. But this is a more shallow mold, so it was easier to get it out. Then I'm using my airbrush to add some gold and some silver to the bottom, kind of an ombre-ish effect. I wanted there to be the color at the bottom, but I didn't want it to go all the way up, and I didn't want it to be too bright and shiny of a color. I wanted it more subtle. So after I got the gold airbrush on there, my airbrush was acting up. It was acting a fool. It was clogging up, driving me crazy. But after I did the first layer of gold all the way around, then I went in with some silver and kind of blended it in. Now these are just artificial leaves, and I wanted them to not be the bright green. So did you know that you can actually add airbrush to your leaves? You can. Just avoid touching them as much as you can after you get them done, because it will rub off fairly easy, because the surface of these leaves is shiny. And paint does not stick to shiny surfaces very well, does it? So just be careful. And I'm just using some thinned out buttercream with my stencil. I didn't want it to be the same pattern all the way around. I wanted it to kind of be patchy. Just kind of, it reminds me of like Roman-esque kind of things that aren't all one piece anymore. I don't know how to explain it, but I kind of like the look of that. So I just kind of went around and randomly placed them. Then I did go in, I forgot to mention this, I did do a gold and silver, a little bit of a splatter. Now what that is a thin down gold paint again, the Everclear and the gold luster or gold highlighter. And then just put it on your brush, remove a little of the excess and just flick it at it. You can bang it on your hand if you want to, or you can just kind of toss it at it. Whatever gets the job done. And then I'm doing the silver there, just the same silver pearl airbrush color. I believe it's Wilton or Duff. I'm not sure. I've had it for a while. Now to add the gold and silver leaf, I just use a little water, dab it on where you want your leaf to stick to. Now if this is fresh fondant or fresh buttercream, you don't have to do this sometimes. But since this has dried, firm to the touch, just because it dries faster on foam. There's no moist cake underneath it to keep it soft. I did need to add a little water. You could add some piping gel if the water isn't working. And then for me, I see these other YouTubers attach this gold and silver leaf, and it's so simple and it goes right where they want it. Not for me. It never, ever, ever does it go right where I want it. I end up with it on my fingers, on my toes, on my forehead. So I just kind of use whatever I have to use to get it on there. If that means using your clean, dry hands, that's fine. Just make sure they're clean. And then for the gold drip, I just use white chocolate and a little bit of white food coloring, a little tiny bit of pink. A trick to getting the yellowish color out of your white chocolate is to actually add white food coloring to it. So you get a neutral color, food color gels. You get a neutral color, and then you can add your other color, and it's going to be more of a solid color instead of having that undertone of yellow, pale yellow to it. And I did a 2-to-1 ratio on this, I believe. I just used my spoon to put it on because I wanted it to be more of a random drip, not a real specifically placed drip that I would use a piping bag for. Now to get these Bas Releif flowers to stick, I just added some water on the back. You could use buttercream, you could use royal icing, you could use chocolate, you could use piping gel. Kind of just depends on what you like to use. And to finish off this cake, I placed some artificial flowers. You could use real flowers if you want, but I have such an arsenal of artificial flowers, I didn't need to buy some flowers. I had some pretty ones on hand. Now this is a fake cake, so I didn't need to wrap the stems, but if it's on a real cake, you might want to go ahead and wrap your stems with some floral tape. And then I just placed some of my macarons in with the flowers. Place them randomly. And then some of my artificial flowers are these hydrangeas, and I just cut off loose petals to use as filler where I had a gap. And sometimes I put a little bit of buttercream behind or underneath my macarons or my flowers that I'm adding, depending on what I'm putting them on. On the top, they didn't necessarily need buttercream because there's the chocolate and it was still soft, so I was able to use that to get it to stick. Here I did use buttercream on the top because I wanted the leaves to have something to stick in. They wanted to fall to the side. And that's not what I wanted. They needed to have some something in them, or them in something to get them to stand up and to stay in place. Then these were dried flowers of some kind. I don't know what kind they were, but I thought that that was a pretty fluffy, kind of airy, another airy, fluffy feel to this cake. Please do not mind my mess in the background. This is my home. We live here. We have schedules. I forgot that stuff was back there. I can't really edit that out. And I'm just adding a little bit of the silver and the gold to the bas relief. You wouldn't have to. I kind of liked it plain too, because the texture alone kind of, you see them with just a texture, but I thought this just brought it out just a little bit more. And that's it, guys. My pretty pale pink chocolate drip cake with all the extra little details. I hope you liked it, and if you did, please like, subscribe, and share. And that way I know what you like, and I know what to put out. And I appreciate your input. So please do all the things, and I guess we'll just catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.